I want to welcome you guys back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. In tonight's episode, what we'll be discussing is what Jake Fischer had to say about Jalen Duren and his restricted free agency. There are three total videos that we'll be going over and putting on the screen. If you guys are watching on YouTube right now, if you're an audio listener, you'll be able to follow along with the conversation as well. Don't worry about it. Always want to include you guys. And to end the podcast, we'll be going over the Ringer's top 50 players in the NBA. Anytime you have a top 50 list, there's going to be a lot of debate, a lot of discourse, probably ruffle some feathers with their top 50 players in the NBA. But let's get straight into the Jalen Duren restricted free agency update. Now, I know JD has been probably a topic of not only my podcast, but a lot of other Detroit Pistons podcast just in the Detroit Pistons space. And I get it. I understand it. It is very, very annoying. We are August 25th. Still resolution. Don't know when we're going to get that Shams notification or that Crispy Haynes notification that he resigned. But Jake Fischer did have some intel with Jalen Duren. And I want to go over it with you guys today. So one of the first videos he had talked about was something we had discussed with. There was this tweet from Full Court Pass, and it was taken out of context. It was aggregated. And Jake Fischer kind of gave his 2 cents with if the relationship is kind of ruined between Jalen Duren and the Detroit Pistons. And this is what he had to say.
I did see and listen to Tim McMahon, my buddy over at ESPN, call this negotiation, quote, awfully nasty, and wonder if this could have long-lasting consequences. I'm going to believe the long-lasting consequences when I see it, because Jalen Duren is a different player than Jonathan Kuminga and Josh Giddey and Dyson Daniels. Totally different position, made an all-star team, was on a team that had won and was a very central figure on a team that won big in the regular season. So very different circumstance for all of those players. But this time last year, I remember hearing how acrimonious it was between Josh Giddey and Chicago and how Dyson Daniels and the Hawks were so far apart. And Kuminga ended up even getting a pretty decent payday from Golden State when all things were said and done. We still got about a month left for restricted free agents to come to terms with their incumbent teams.
So I did want to kind of just put that on the screen and let Jake kind of talk about that tweet in general. Obviously, Tim McMahon was just kind of talking out loud. It was more of an opinion about, he wonders if, the negotiations between Jalen Duren and the Pistons, how they're going, and could that actually ruin a relationship between the player and the organization and the front office? Jake doesn't really think so whatsoever. I think his point is Jalen Duren is a much higher caliber player than a Josh Giddey, than a Jonathan Kuminga. And obviously, I think Jonathan Kuminga is a very good example because Kuminga wanted $30 million. He ended up signing for $25 million. Jalen Duren has been reportedly, asking for around the, $50 million range. We're going to get an update in the next video of, how those negotiations have gone and, what Jalen Duren could possibly sign for. But I did want to put that video first on the screen. I think a lot of times we see tweets like this from Full Court Pass. They are completely taken out of context and they're aggregated like crazy. Like if you guys go listen to the Hoop Collective podcast with Tim McMahon and Vinny Goodwill, he was literally asking Vinny a question. He says, I don't know the kid. He was just asking a question. But that was the first section of this Jake Fischer report with Jalen Duren. The second piece was about what the Detroit Pistons and Jalen Duren are discussing for his next contract extension.
I talked to someone today with some level of knowledge of the situation who still believes that he's on track for a 4-year, $160 million deal.
So if you guys can do the math, 4 years, 160, that is roughly $40 million a year for Jalen Duren on an average annual salary. I know we had discussed the 5 years, 180. I completely had a brain fart. I'm going to call myself out. I said it was 30 million. Do the math in your head. It's 36 million, not 30 million. That is my mistake, my mess up, my bad. In the last podcast, we had discussed about the 5 years, 180. Jake Fischer talked to someone with knowledge of the situation with the Detroit Pistons organization, and they're hearing 4 years, 160 is what is being discussed right now.
Something in the 40 AAV range. He's clearly going to want some type of money closer to what Walker Kessler got than what Mitchell Robinson got, just to use two linchpins of the center market from this summer. But I think when all things are said and done and he makes life-changing money, I do see an opportunity for this to get mended. But we'll see. The tricky aspect of all this is the messaging coming out of Detroit that the Pistons view Ausar Thompson as their second best player and not Jalen Duren.
I think that's actually really important because I've seen a lot of national podcasters. I know Vinny Goodwill had said it. I even heard Zach Lowe talk about it, that the Detroit Pistons brass, their organization from the top down, view Ausar Thompson as their second best player, not Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren made an all-star team, made third team All-NBA, and the Pistons don't really view him as the second best player next to Cade Cunningham. But I'll let you listen to Jake the rest of the video.
Which is fine, and that's your prerogative if you're anyone who works for the Pistons, but you just don't want to hear that if you're Jalen Duren. And now Ausar Thompson's extension talks and his rookie scale stuff will happen before the season, and he is almost certainly going to get extended. And if that just happens so quickly, and this has been a whole year dragged out with Duren, it will be a tricky thing to monitor moving forward.
So that's another aspect of the Jalen Duren restricted free agency and Ausar Thompson being extension eligible. Like, obviously, we know that Duren was extension eligible last offseason. The two sides did not come to an agreement. They were very far off on an agreement from what I was told in private with, some people that do cover the team. They were very far off. I don't know what the exact figures were. All I was told was that they were very far off, meaning Trajan Langdon in the front office and Jalen Duren and his agent and his representation from last offseason, last summer. And now this summer, when he is a restricted free agent, and we've heard reports that, he's eligible for that $287 million over a 5-year period, which is, I believe, roughly $57 million. Obviously, the Pistons don't want to give him that. Now they're talking about a 4 years, 160, and this has been a year-long process of talking with an extension. And to Jake's point, saying if Jalen Duren signs that extension for whatever the figure is, we'll just kind of push that off to the side. If Ausar Thompson extends within maybe a week or so after Jalen Duren signs, I think that's what a lot of people have been discussing, of saying like, hey, if you're Jalen Duren, you shouldn't have to hear that the Pistons view Ausar Thompson as the second best player and you're due up for an extension. Like, there could be a world where, Duren signs for $40 million and Ausar extends for, anywhere from 32 to 35. Duren might feel some type of way. He might. Now, obviously, we don't know Jalen Duren. I've never talked to him before, but I think that's a lot of a speculation from what I hear from people like Jake Fischer, Vinny Goodwill, Zach Lowe, like a lot of people that are in the national space that kind of have a better understanding, talking with people, around the league and what they kind of believe could be going on behind the scenes, right? So that is something to pay attention to. What is the figure with Jalen Duren? How quickly does Ausar Thompson extend? Because it sounds like as soon as Jalen Duren does get his extension, Ausar Thompson has already agreed, let's get this extension done. I want to be a Piston. I want to grow with Cade. I want to grow with Jalen Duren. I want to grow with this core. Like, Ausar is 100% locked in. He wants to sign an extension this summer. He doesn't want to wait until next summer. He wants to get it done right now. So that is something to pay attention to, and that is something Jake did mention as well. Like, how fast does that actually happen? Could that actually make Duren feel some type of way because Asar didn't make an all-star team this past season. Duren did. Asar didn't make an all-NBA team. Duren did. Asar did have honors and awards, making first-team all-NBA, which is an incredible accomplishment. But, Duren might feel some type of way. He might. We don't know that to be a fact, but it's just a lot of what ifs and what he could possibly be feeling. It's just speculation, all right? It's just speculation from people nationally. Now, one of the last videos was about sign and trades, and this is what Jake Fischer has heard, talking with executives around the league with Jalen Duren's market in sign and trades.
Even engage any of that? I don't.
Oh, let me start it over. I apologize.
There are no other situations for him, though. I really do think the second that Boston moved Jaylen Brown to Philadelphia, that kind of wiped out any realistic sign and trade scenario for Duren, because the Pistons haven't wanted to even engage any of that. I don't think they really wanted to engage Boston with it, but I think at a certain point in time, if Boston let that situation with Jaylen Brown fester and it got worse and they still, they were going to trade Jaylen Brown regardless, clearly in hindsight. But if the market ended up getting worse for other teams and both their options were limited, the Pistons and the Celtics, I do believe there would have been some type of plausibility there to make that happen at some.
That's actually kind of interesting. I know we had discussed sign and trade situations. There was like a little bit of like Jalen Duren likes the Celtics. Could there be something there? Jake is kind of insinuating that, those conversations were had. Obviously, we don't know the depth of those conversations of a possible sign and trade with Jalen Duren going to Boston. Like, what were the Pistons going to get back? Could they have gotten into the Jaylen Brown sweepstakes? That's actually kind of interesting to hear from his perspective with the sign and trade situation that we had heard all offseason with Jalen Duren.
Point in time, but Boston didn't wait. So after that, the Lakers clearly wanted Walker Kessler over Jalen Duren. Sacramento, I don't think was ever a real viable situation for Duren, but we'll see how this all ultimately concludes. We've got a month left of it, and I don't think it's ending anytime soon.
The other two teams he had talked about were the Los Angeles Lakers. I know Jalen Duren met with them twice when free agency opened up, and I think the Lakers had always had eyes for Walker Kessler. They wanted to hear Jalen Duren out with him and his representation. I don't know if he met them face to face or if it was just a phone call. But the Lakers always wanted Walker Kessler. Maybe they were just kind of hearing Jalen Duren out. Kind of sounds like they wasted his time. And the Sacramento Kings aspect was always interesting because they never really had the room to actually sign Jalen Duren. I know it was reported by Mark Spears of ESPN that Scott Perry met with Jalen Duren down in Miami, Florida, and they had dinner and discussed maybe, what could possibly happen, if the Pistons were open to a sign and trade. But we now know that the Pistons have basically told teams that they're not really open to trading Jalen Duren. They want to have him back. They want to bring him back. So there is a lot to just digest and unpack with what Jake Fischer had reported. To start off, he kind of talked about the aggregation from Full Court Pass and Tim McMahon of just speculating with the relationship. He still feels like if Jalen Duren gets that life-changing money, that could mend that relationship really quickly. From going from a rookie scale contract to making $40 million, I think most of us would be okay with it. It's like, hey man, I'm making $40 million. Like I'm happy. The Asar Thompson aspect, I think, is something that a lot of people have talked about with how quickly does Asar extend, and could that upset Jalen Duren because he's been going back and forth with the front office and working with his agent for the past year with signing a new contract. So that's also something to pay attention to. And then the sign and trade conversation, the Boston one, when I heard that, I was like, man, like if Boston would have just kind of held on a little bit, like maybe Detroit could have gotten the Jaylen Brown sweepstakes. I don't even know how they honestly do that because only $20 million of Jalen Duren's contract would have been able to be added to a sign and trade. So Pistons probably would have had to include a couple more pieces to, get up to Jalen Brown's massive $50 million salary. But lots to unpack, a lot of good stuff from Jake Fischer over at Bleacher Report. If you guys want to go listen to it, I will link it down in the YouTube description so you guys can listen to Jake Fischer. He talked about Peyton Watson. He talked about Klay Thompson, even some New Orleans Pelicans stuff in there as well. If you guys just want to go in and listen to his podcast, he's very tapped in nationally, works with Mark Stein over at the Stein Line. We'll link it down in the description if you're watching on YouTube and you guys want to go listen to his podcast. But did want to discuss the Jalen Duren stuff. Now, obviously, I know we did a podcast, I believe yesterday it was, with the Bleacher Report mock trade ideas. The Milwaukee one I still think is terrible. And I saw some people saying like I would do that deal all day for Miles Turner and Ryan Rollins. I wouldn't. I just wouldn't. I told you guys that I like Khalil Ware better, I like Tyler Hero better. Even you could like sell me Hami Hakas. That's just me though. Obviously I know that it's a mock trade. It's not real. Doesn't sound like the Pistons are really interested in doing any type of sign and trade with any teams. And I think they're pretty confident that they can get a deal done. But I mean, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff on the timeline. Like I saw someone having the pitchforks out that Trajan needs to be fired because this offseason was a failure. I was like, I'm not that in that far of left field where I feel like the offseason was a failure. Was it underwhelming? 100%. Do I think Trajan Langdon should get fired? No, it's stupid. But that's just me. I'm a little bit more positive, I would say, as it comes to the Pistons. I still think they will be a good team. Before we do get into the Ringer's top 50 NBA players, which will be a good conversation, definitely be a good conversation, we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back for break, we will be putting all 50 players on the list that the Ringer did make and going over it with you guys. Should be a good one. We'll be right back, you guys. Okay, we are back. Let's get into this Ringer top 50 players in the NBA according to them. Now, obviously, I do want to say according to the Ringer because I think a lot of us, when we think about the top 50 players in the NBA, I think a lot of us might have Cade Cunningham higher, but we're going to be going over this full list. I'm going to start from 50 and work our way up to number 1. So at number 50, they have Brandon Miller of the Charlotte Hornets, which I do think Brandon Miller is a top 50 player. I probably would have him higher than one of his teammates that's up 3 spots above him. I know he did have a good rookie year, but I don't think he's 47. That's just me. But Brandon Miller comes in at number 50. Number 49, a New Orleans Pelican, Trey Murphy III, a player we talked about a crap load this offseason. I really thought we were going to get him this year, you guys. I really did. But New Orleans just does not want to be a functional organization. They're just going to run it back. Speaking of running it back in New Orleans, Zion Williamson comes in at number 48. I think that's kind of fair for Zion. If he has another productive season, I could definitely see him, creeping up in the, top 25 range. I think the one thing with him that maybe not a lot of people notice is he actually had a pretty good defensive season, and he stayed in relatively good shape. Looks like he's in good shape again. So be interesting to see what the Pelicans do with him. I think they still want to build around him, but I'm kind of waiting for them to cut ties and just kind of cut bait and build around somebody. Don't know who that's going to be, whether that's Derek Queen or Jeremiah Fears, but kind of seems like New Orleans is trying to do 2 things at once: stay competitive, but still kind of like retool. weird. It's really weird. Concanipple, number 47. Again, I don't think Concanipple is a better player than Brandon Miller. I think Brandon Miller is a better player than Concanipple. Had an incredible rookie season. Don't get me wrong. Like, just the way he was able to shoot the basketball from long range was incredible. But man, he shrank in the play. I've never seen a player just absolutely freeze up in the playoffs. Like, there was a stat that popped my timeline and it made me chuckle. And I think some Pistons fans listening to this will probably get a good laugh out of it. Andre Drummond made more threes in the playoffs than Concanipple. And I get the Hornets were fighting in the play-in, obviously got obliterated by the Magic after they beat the Heat. But Andre Drummond made more threes within a week's time, or in a couple days' time, I should say, than Concanipple, which is absolutely crazy. De'Aaron Fox comes in at number 46. I want to talk about shrinking in the playoffs. De'Aaron Fox had a really bad finals. Really, really, really bad finals. But he's still a good player. Again, like, I think a lot of lists are subjective of how you value them. I still think De'Aaron Fox is a good player. His backcourt mate and a teammate, Dylan Harper, is ranked above him at number 45. I love Dylan Harper. I really do. Like, the other San Antonio guard in this is Stephon Castle, and he's ranked a good 20 spots above them. But I'm a little bit higher on De'Aaron Fox just because I know what I'm getting. I think Dylan Harper's going to be a good player, but I would probably have De'Aaron Fox just ranked above him a little bit more. But I think Dylan Harper's going to be an absolute stud. Could definitely see him, being in the top 25 rankings next season. Joel Embiid. Oh, I skipped past Jalen Duren. Did not mean to do that. Jalen Duren comes in at number 44. Obviously, the season that he did have, All NBA, All Star, had an incredible season. My only thing with top 50 players in the NBA is I see Jalen Duren at 44, right? Right above him, Joel Embiid at 43, Aaron Gordon at 42, and Cooper Flag at 41. I like Cooper Flag. I do. But I maybe it's just me because I fell victim to this last year. Like, last summer, a lot of people had Victor Wembanyama like number 2 and number 3 in rankings before he had the season that he just had this past season, right? And like, I understand getting with the hype of a prospect. I don't know if I would rank Cooper Flag, above players like Embiid, a Gordon, and a Duren. I think Duren, just like with his playoffs, he's kind of just lumped in here. If like he didn't have like the all-time drop off in playoffs, he'd probably be a little bit closer in the 30s, but obviously he did. Joel Embiid, 43, don't really have a problem with it. If he stays healthy, he's good. If he doesn't, it's just kind of there. Aaron Gordon, which, really high level role player for the Nuggets right now. And I think they're going to be relying on him a lot more. Him and Christian Braun with Peyton Watson going to Cleveland. Cooper Flag at 41, and kind of gave you my reasons. I think Cooper Flag has a lot of potential, but I think a lot of people are just putting him in these lists a little bit like too high for my liking. I could be wrong. It could be another Wemby situation where he just pops off, and I'm wrong, and I'll admit when I'm wrong. But like, we'll probably do this ranking again next summer and kind of see like where he's at in these lists. Desmond Bane comes in at number 40. Don't really have a problem with that. He had a good season with Orlando. It's just he was hurt for a majority of it. And then second half of the season, I thought he did better. Rudy Gobert at 39. Again, Rudy's an incredible defender. Very limited offensively, but that's okay. Did see him kind of compete in the FIBA against Jokic, and he put the ball on the floor and dunked it. I was like, holy crap, like, what's going on with Rudy? Franz Wagner at 38. Franz is just got to stay healthy. Like, if he stays healthy, he's probably talked about in the, low to mid 20s, in my opinion. He just hasn't stayed healthy. Lauri Markkanen from the Jazz at 37. I think that's fair for Lauri. Amen Thompson from the Rockets at 36. Amen is just really, really good. I honestly think that he could definitely also be talked about in the top 20s as well. I really do. Just the way he's able to put the ball on the floor and just be so damn athletic for the Houston Rockets. It's kind of interesting to see that Sar didn't make this list, but Amen did. But I understand Amen has the ball in his hands, has more opportunities than Sar, but it's interesting. Derek White is at 35. I think that's appropriate for Derek White. Did have a season where he did not shoot the ball the best, but he's still a really good defender, one of the best shot blockers at the guard position. So not too mad with Derek White being at 35 from the Celtics. From the Lakers, Austin Reeves at number 34. Had an incredible season to score in the basketball, but I think we all understand the guy's a cone defensively. Still a cone defensively, but can definitely get you 20 on any given night. LaMelo Ball. I was going to say the Charlotte Hornets. The Minnesota Timberwolves. LaMelo Ball. 33. I think that's fair for LaMelo Ball. I think he could definitely be a player that we talk about in, the top 20 range. I'm really curious to see how an Anthony Edwards and a LaMelo Ball backcourt do together, because I think both of those guys are dynamic. They can both shoot the hell out of the ball. But it'll be interesting to see how he does thrive with, I think, probably the most talent that he's ever had around him, with Anthony Edwards being one of the best shooting guards in the league, having an elite shot blocker and Rudy Gobert, really good 3-and-D wing with Jaden McDaniels. Like, I really do like Minnesota's team. I'm just curious to see how he does thrive with, higher talent surrounding him. J-Dub, Jalen Williams from the Thunder, comes in at number 32. He just had such a up and down season with injuries. Like, he'd come back, look good for a few games, then he re-aggravated his wrist, or he was just going through some type of injury. He comes in at number 32. I think that's fair for him. Still really good 3-and-D wing and a champion for that matter. James Harden comes in at number 31. Kind of think that's a little disrespectful to James Harden, even though they're the playoffs. I absolutely hated watching the flopping. I did. Like, I thought it was disgusting, but he's still a bucket, even as he's gotten older. He's still an absolute bucket. I think 31 is kind of crazy to me, but I'd probably have him a little bit higher. I'd have him in the 20s to late 20s, but that's just me. Alperen Sengun from the Houston Rockets comes in at number 30. I don't really have a problem with that. He's been productive for the Rockets. Obviously, he got absolutely obliterated by Rui Hachimura in the first round of the playoffs, and they just had him in an absolute box. But he's still a good center. Paolo Banchero comes in at number 29 from the Orlando Magic. Kind of like Desmond Bane. Like, the Magic were just so injured, and you never really saw their core three of Banchero, Bane, and Wagner on the court together because they were just all injured. And it was just a situation where, they were just kind of like at this like bubble playing team, and, they had to fight to make the playoffs and make the 8 seed. So hope they are healthy this year. New head coach and Sean Sweeney, should be interesting to see what they do. Chet Holmgren from the OKC Thunder comes in at number 28. And my computer actually shut off while I was talking. Maybe I'm bored of my computer. That's actually hilarious. That has never happened when I've done a podcast before. Don't really have a problem with Chet being at 28. I think he was kind of underwhelming in the Western Conference Finals, but still a good player, my personal opinion. Pascal Siakam, number 27. Pacers were just so bad without Halliburton, but Siakam was still out there putting up numbers. It just didn't really translate to too many wins. It'll be good to have a healthy Tyrese Halliburton back in the NBA, because when the Pacers are good and the Pistons are good, it just makes for must-watch and must-see TV. Beating the Pacers didn't feel as good as a Piston fan because I knew they were injured and they were kind of just going through just a bad season. That's just me, though. Like, I want to beat the Pacers at their best when they have Siakam and they have Turner and they have Halliburton out there. But that's just me. Stephon Castle, number 26, from the San Antonio Spurs. Don't really have a problem with that either. Like, Castle was a really, really good player for the San Antonio Spurs. He was a big piece of why they were so good defensively. He's an absolute dog. But, the Spurs have 4 players in here with, Wemby being at the top, and then you have your guards and De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper, and Stephon Castle make the top 50. So I honestly think if Stephon Castle develops a little bit more offensively, I mean, you could talk about him in the top 15 range. Like I think it's definitely in the realm of possibilities. Bam Adebayo, top 25. I don't know if he's in the top 25 because he scored that 80-point game. I'm just joking. Bam is a good player. He's a good center. Don't really have a problem with Bam at 25. Just have to see how he looks with Giannis now. Like, how does he look next to another high caliber all-star player? Now, I mean, he's played with Jimmy Butler in the past, but I think we can understand that Giannis is a much better player than Jimmy Butler. I'm curious to see how the spacing looks with them in Miami. Number 24, the Cleveland Cavaliers, Evan Mobley. I saw someone say, why is Evan Mobley even in this? Evan Mobley's a good player, but I'd be lying to you guys. Like, if we talk about Cade's draft class, we talk about players that were drafted in the top 4, like Cade, Jalen Green, Evan Mobley, Scotty Barnes. Like, we can just kind of push Jalen Green off to the side. But like, you talk about Cade, Scotty Barnes, and Evan Mobley. Like, Cade and Scotty Barnes are the franchise guys there. I can't really say that about Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley to me is just like, how do I kind of phrase this? Like a high level glue guy, like a role player. Like, I don't think a team would trade for Evan Mobley being under the assumption that he's a franchise guy. I just don't think Evan Mobley's a franchise type of player. And not every player that gets drafted is going to be that, but I think that's a conversation a lot of people have with Evan Mobley. And I get it. He's one of the defensive player of the year, but he's had a really good system in place, has really good teammates around him. In the front court, he's got Jared Allen protecting the rim. But I mean, he's developed quite a bit. He's developed more of an outside game. But Evan Mobley at 24, I don't know. I might have Bam Adebayo higher than Evan Mobley. That's just me, though. Next is Jalen Johnson from the Hawks. Incredible season for him. Really showed out, point forward. I'm really high on Jalen Johnson. I've told you guys that in the past. Definitely could see him where Scotty Barnes is currently at next season if he keeps developing and just keeps, working in his craft. Like, the Hawks are a very, very interesting team, and he was at the forefront of them, just kind of turning it around once they did trade Trae Young to the Wizards, but really high on Jalen Johnson. Denny Avdia, number 22. I feel like Denny's a little bit rated a little bit disrespectfully, in my opinion. He just had such a great season with the Blazers. I could honestly argue that Denny could be as high as in the top 15, like around that range in the next 11 through 20. If you guys got the chance to watch Blazers games, and he's a little bit like Harden in the sense where he does foul bait, but he has such a big offensive responsibility where the system kind of revolves around Denny Avdia. Denny Avdia has the ball in his hands. He's, getting them a cool 20, dropping, 4 or 5 assists a night. And he's just kind of the engine that keeps the Blazers going. And obviously, they had a really big trade this offseason acquiring Ja Morant. Kind of reminds me of the Phoenix Suns from a few years ago when they carried like 3 guards, where they had like Isaiah Thomas, Goran Dragic, and Eric Bledsoe. Now they have Ja Morant, Scoot Henderson, and Drew Holiday. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of like works. Kind of sucks with the news of Shaedon Sharpe. Tough to say. I don't know if you guys saw that he's going to be out for 6 months because he did. I don't remember the injury off the top of my head, but he's going to be out for 6 months. Hate to see that. Hate seeing players get injured, but again, then he should be way higher. OG Anunoby, number 21 from the New York Knicks, defending champs. OG was so huge in the playoffs. Like, again, like I could argue he should be anywhere between like. See, this is hard with top 50 lists. Like, I'm looking at like Donovan Mitchell, who's as high as 11, and then LeBron James, who's as low as 20. I could say you could swap Jamal Murray for OG. OG was incredible. Obviously, Jamal Murray did have a really good season with the Nuggets, but I think I just value wings, like 3-and-D wings, and OG was incredible for the Knicks. But He's at 21. I think he's a little bit um, underappreciated in this ranking. LeBron James at 20 is still crazy. Um, I know he had a season where it was brand new for him, had to kind of play second fiddle to Luka, but reading LeBron James at 20 in a top 50 NBA players list is just messing with my brain because I'm so used to seeing LeBron in top 5, top 10. Um, Again, I don't really know where you would put LeBron. Like, could you argue he should be as high as like 17 where Scotty's at? Probably not. But it's just kind of messing with my brain. I don't even know where I would actually put LeBron in, today's NBA players, but they do have him at number 20. 19, Jamal Murray. I think it's fair. Devin Booker, number 18. I mean, Book does his thing out there in Phoenix. Number 17, Scotty Barnes. 17 from the Raptors. I think Scotty could be a little bit higher. I would probably have him higher than Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum, we really didn't get to see this past season. I think they just put Jason Tatum in there just because of like recency bias. And, obviously he's one of the best, two-way forwards out there. But I want to see how he does look after, coming back from that injury. I know we saw it a little bit towards the end of the season, but you could tell he was not 100%. He was maybe like 50% healthy, if we're being honest with ourselves. But I think Scotty could be as high as where Jason Tatum's at 13. Kevin Durant's at 16. Don't really hate it. I think it's fair for the season that he had. Tyrese Maxey's at 15, which I think he should be higher. I think you could have Maxey as high as where Donovan Mitchell's at. That's just me. I thought Maxey had an incredible season. Jaylen Brown at 14. Again, I would probably have Jaylen Brown higher than Jason Tatum, given the season that he did have. And I still have my questions about Tatum. Karl Anthony Towns from the Knicks, number 12. Donovan Mitchell, number 11 from the Cavs. Stephen Curry, top 10 from Golden State Warriors. I respect it. Cade Cunningham, number 9 from the Detroit Pistons. Now, this is where I saw a lot of Pistons fans saying, like, he should at least be where Anthony Edwards is at. Now, I think with the season Cade had, you could have an argument that he should at least be higher than Kawhi. Kawhi had a really good season, though, like a really, really good season. But kind of given just like where Cade is at in his development and like where he's currently at, I think you could definitely make a case that he should be higher than Kawhi. He should at least be 8. Just kind of the body of the work and what he has to work with. That's just my opinion. Kawhi comes in at number 8. I don't have a problem with that. Giannis at number 7. Anthony Edwards at number 6. Jalen Brunson, number 5. Luka Doncic, number 4. Nikola Jokic, number 3. Victor Wembanyama, number 2. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, number 1. Again, I would probably have Cade higher. I think Duren, with the playoffs that he had, is kind of appropriate. Cooper Flag one, I'm still like, I like him, but I don't really know if I'd have him at 41. I'd probably have him a little bit lower, kind of have him like in the De'Aaron Fox range. It's just me. But let me know what you guys think of the Ringer's top 50 NBA players list and the Jalen Duren stuff as well. The Jalen Duren stuff was very interesting with what they're reportedly talking about of a 4-year, $160 million contract that would be around $40 million on an average annual salary. But I will talk to you guys down below in the comment section. Like always, hope you guys are staying safe. Take care, and we will catch you guys in the next podcast video. Peace.